From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Thousands of young people in Senegal attend and live at religious schools called daras. These schools accept only boys. The students are called talibé and they study the Quran. Some daras force students to ask strangers on the street for money and food. The government had promised to stop this forced begging by 2015. But the organization Human Rights Watch says there has been little progress. Recently, a government study found that more than 30,000 students were begging in Dakar, the capital. The boys were reported to be as young as 4 years old. They are often walking the streets shoeless and in torn old clothes. Matt Wells is a West African researcher for Human Rights Watch. He says the boys must bring back a required amount of money, sugar, and rice or face punishment. He says teachers will often severely beat talibé who fail to meet the demand. He also says the boys usually are hungry, live in dirty, overcrowded rooms, and receive very little real education. In March 2013, 8 talibé died in a fire in Dakar. Neighbors said they knew the children could not escape from the school building in which they were living. After the fire, Senegalese officials promised to take steps against child begging. But Human Rights Watch says the government has closed only one dara for safety reasons. HRW says there are hundreds more that violate students' rights. Senegal's Ministry of Justice says it knows of the problems and is working on new legislation. But a ministry official notes there is cultural resistance to laws restricting religion. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Parents in South Australia's Aboriginal areas may lose some of their financial aid if they do not send their children to school. New rules link school attendance with government assistance to people living in poverty. Warren Mundine is Prime Minister Tony Abbott's top advisor on issues concerning Aboriginal Australians or Aborigines. He disagrees with linking the aid to school attendance. Instead, he urges the government to find ways to improve attendance without punishing parents. He says he thinks strong punitive measures should be the last plan of action. Mr. Mundine says the situation can change if tribal leaders support education. He says the government needs to work with parents and communities to make what he calls a massive cultural change. Other officials argue that the threat of stopping aid will force families to take education more seriously. In South Australia State, only 50% of children stay in school after the age of 15. In some areas, as many as 90% of Aboriginal children struggle to read and write. The state government says it has special programs for Aboriginal students. It says students work with their parents and teachers to develop a personal learning plan and re-examine it every year. Public schools also have people available who can work individually with Aboriginal students who need extra help. And there is a program that helps Aboriginal students deal with the change from middle school to high school. About 670,000 Aborigines live in Australia. The state of Western Australia also has special programs for these native peoples and other groups. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. It was not just another day in a classroom recently for some young people in Washington, D.C. These student volunteers visited the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History to test a new program. Some students explored the mysteries of human bones. Other students examined an insect under a microscope. The student volunteers were among the first to help test a new exhibit, a new showing at the museum. The program has an unusual name, spoken as Curious and written as Q?RIUS. The exhibits are designed so young people can learn about science by taking part in experiments. The program combines the newest technologies and scientific equipment with more than 6,000 museum objects, both real and digital. Students from local schools helped develop the exhibit, which combines science and art. Teachers will bring their science students to the exhibit in the mornings. In the afternoons, the exhibits will be open to everyone. Many of the students already have their favorite activities at the center. 13-year-old Nate said he liked exploring the containers with dinosaur bones. Addie is 12 years old. She liked the bee display. She found that the bumblebee and the yellow bumblebee were very different when she examined them under a microscope. Another student, Ben, said he enjoyed an exhibit that lets people use their senses to learn. He said, for example, that a butterfly smells a little like tea. Involving the senses, smell, touch, hearing, is one of the exhibit's major goals. Curious can also be found online. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. South Africa has 11 official languages. If you want to say hello, it's Sawubona in Zulu and hello in Afrikaans. Now, South African school children may start using ni hao to say hello. The country's education ministry hopes to add Mandarin language classes in some schools. Mandarin is the official spoken language of China. That country is a major trading power for South Africa. The two countries recently signed an agreement that identifies 5 areas of cooperation. They include curriculum development, mathematics and science, teacher training, and research and development in basic education. South African officials have not said how much the Mandarin language classes will cost. Troy Martens works for the Ministry of Basic Education. She says the new partnership is extremely valuable to both sides. The part of the plan that has gained the most attention is a proposal to offer Mandarin classes in schools. Last year, a public opinion survey showed that South Africans have mixed feelings about China. It found that 46% of South Africans do not like the spread of Chinese ideas and customs in their country. And 60% of South Africans said they dislike Chinese music, movies, and television. But Ms. Martens says trade with China is more important than those feelings. She says it is extremely helpful for South African students to learn about the Mandarin language and Chinese culture. And, she said, not every school will offer the language training. South African census officials have not said how many native Chinese speakers there are in the country. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Students at St. Louis University have launched weather balloons into the sky above the city of St. Louis, Missouri. The United States Space Agency, NASA, is paying for the project to measure ozone gas. It is part of a study to learn more about air pollution and our climate. The students are getting the opportunity to carry out a real scientific experiment. They used a laptop computer and a radio receiver outside the St. Louis Science Center to communicate with data gathering devices on the balloon. Before launch, the students tested all the instruments and attached them to the weather balloon filled with helium. Gary Morris is a professor at Valparaiso University in Indiana. He is the lead trainer for the nationwide study. The professor says NASA wants more information on ozone because of how it affects our atmosphere. High above the Earth, in the stratosphere, the ozone layer keeps harmful ultraviolet radiation from reaching the ground. But in the lower atmosphere, emissions from cars and other sources like petrochemical plants form ozone pollution and smog. They cause unhealthy air conditions that affect breathing. Jack Fishman leads the ozone study at St. Louis University. He says new requirements that decrease pollution have lowered ozone levels in American cities. But he notes that pollution in remote areas continues to increase. He blames industrial activity in East Asia for that pollution. Jack Fishman says polluted air is being blown across the Pacific by air currents in the upper atmosphere. He says ozone pollution has slowed the growth of farm crops and forests. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Many Syrians are trying to study overseas while a civil war continues in their country. Thousands of Syrian university students sought help when they learned there was money to help them continue their education. Leen Al-Zabak is with Jusur, an organization for Syrians living overseas. Jusur joined with the American-based Institute of International Education to create the Syria Consortium for Higher Education in Crisis. More than 40 universities in the United States and Europe agreed to provide emergency aid to Syrian students and professors. Each university decides which students to accept. Universities in the consortium are supporting 70 students right now. One member of the consortium is American University in Washington. It is supporting a Syrian graduate student and a faculty member in the university's School of International Service. Daniela Kayast is the vice president of the Institute of International Education. She expects there will be aid opportunities for 600 Syrian students during the next few months. She notes that a former president of Portugal, Jorge Sampaio, launched a scholarship program called the Global Platform for Syrian Students. He created the program because of Portugal's history of educating Jewish refugee children during World War II. The Institute of International Education also has a scholar rescue fund for university professors and researchers in any country in crisis. This year, the fund found places for 30 Syrian scholars in 5 countries. All of the scholarship programs may be found online at iie.org. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Almost 40 years have passed since Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong died and his Cultural Revolution ended. Changes in Chinese life caused widespread suffering during the Cultural Revolution. In recent times, some aging teachers and student leaders who lived through this period in Chinese history have been telling their stories. One of the first such stories published in China told of an apology from a student to a teacher. The apology gained attention in the West since appearing in China in 2010. The teacher was Chun Bi, now 90 years old and retired. She worked at the Beijing Foreign Language School during the Cultural Revolution. Today, Shen Xiaoke is a 60-year-old lawyer. He was a teenage student at Chun Bi's school in 1966. In August of that year, school was suspended. Political indoctrination was extreme. Mao incited people to denounce teachers, intellectuals, and others in important positions. Students influenced by his speeches turned against Chun Bi. Chun Bi recalls the period with horror. She says, "For us who were persecuted, it was a nightmare." Shen Xiaoke says he heard many students argue among themselves about who was the most revolutionary. People tried to prove they were revolutionaries by hurting other people. Chun Bi said if students did not strike others, they would be accused of opposing the Cultural Revolution. So people who were normally not aggressive would start hitting victims. 3 years ago, Shen Xiaoke decided to face the past. "We need to apologize to our teachers," he says. He wrote Chun Bi an apology letter. He expressed his regrets for himself and for others in his class. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Kid Pan Alley is a non-profit organization that holds songwriting workshops for students across the United States. The organization recently visited a school in the Anacostia area of Washington. The children presented a concert with the help of songwriter and recording artist Paul Reisler. He established Kid Pan Alley in 1999. Since then, he has worked with more than 35,000 students and produced more than 2,200 songs. He says the power of music can teach children skills they might not learn in school. He believes the American educational system is focused too much on standardized tests designed to measure knowledge. But Paul Reisler says we now live in a creative economy. He says his group is trying to inspire children to be creative. At Orr Elementary School in Anacostia, 95% of students come from poor families. Marlon Ray is the school's dean of students. He says some of the children have difficult lives. But, he says, these kids still want to strive for greatness. Jonna Turner is director of programs at the school. She says the 4th and 5th grade students are often focused on more than school. Some have to help their families or live in homeless shelters. A shooting took place in April directly in front of the school. No one was injured, but the incident affected the whole community. Students are often influenced by what happens around them. Still, Orr Elementary School has a positive, hopeful atmosphere. Marlon Ray says the workshop and concert made possible by Kid Pan Alley created good memories that will last for years. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Chinese students have a long history of coming to the United States for education. And this month, American educators expect high schools across America to enroll more Chinese students than ever. 17-year-old Grace Liu is one of about 30,000 Chinese citizens at American high schools. She grew up in Tianjin, a city of 14 million people on China's east coast. This fall, she is starting her third year of high school in the southeastern United States. Grace attends Rabun Gap Nkuchi School in Rabun Gap, a small community in the state of Georgia. She sounds very happy with her surroundings. Anthony Scrow heads the Rabun Gap School. He says the number of Chinese applications or requests to attend the school has risen sharply in the last 15 years. Many of the students are from China's growing middle class. They want a good education and to improve their chances to attend America's most respected universities. Attending schools outside of China also means an escape from the intense competition at schools inside China. Memorization by rote is common there. This method of learning through memory exercises uses up a lot of time. It can keep students from taking part in sports or interest groups. Anthony Scrow says some of Rabun's citizens have expressed displeasure about the young Chinese arrivals. Mr. Scrow says his students see stories about China in newspapers and on television. He says they also will know 5 students from that country. He said this helps the student understand that they need to be aware and interested in what is happening around them. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Today, we hear expert suggestions for academic writing. Jennifer Ahern Dodson is an assistant professor of the Practice in Writing Studies at Duke University in North Carolina. Ms. Ahern Dodson likes to start a discussion with both students and professors planning to write a paper or essay. She asks about their earlier writing experiences. Were they negative or positive? She says you are not alone if you have had problems with your writing. Everyone struggles with writing. Writing is hard. It's hard for all writers at some point she says. And at some point, you are going to hit a roadblock, she adds. She advises to think about earlier experiences. When the writing is going well, what was happening? When the writing was not going well, what was happening? She says most people's negative writing experiences happened because a very specific formula or page limit was required. Another problem can arise when the need to do well on a paper is extremely important. Anxiety, she says, can make it harder to get the writing done. Ms. Ahern Dodson says when writing comes easily, the writers believe they have something important to say. She advises asking yourself questions. What insights can you bring to your paper? Why does this subject matter? What is the importance? For whom is it meaningful? Who will be reading it? You can ease writing by placing your attention on what you have to offer. That, says Ms. Ahern Dodson, is an important change for all writers. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Recently, there have been increased efforts to make sure children in Africa get a good, strong education. But a new report says governments are losing about $129 billion every year on poor quality education. As a result, about 1 in 4 students in poor countries cannot read a complete sentence. That represents about 175 million young people. The report comes from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It says poor teacher training and spending cuts are just 2 of the reasons for schools failing. Pauline Rose, an education specialist, directed the report. She says more teachers are needed in African countries south of the Sahara Desert. She says the area needs an additional 225,000 teachers a year to improve primary school education by 2015. Pauline Rose says governments like saving money by using contract teachers. These teachers are not government employees, but work by special agreement. Contract teachers can easily be dismissed. In addition, they earn far less money than teachers working for the government. The UNESCO report says governments will need to increase spending on education. In many countries, financial support for education has decreased or stayed the same in recent years. The report praises some countries. It says South Africa provides 6 times more money to teach students in areas with low education levels and high unemployment. And Malawi is creating teacher colleges to train teachers for rural areas. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. The United Nations Children's Fund is appealing to international donors to help provide education money for Syrian school children. Safe places to learn, teachers, and supplies are all lacking, and almost 2 million young Syrian students have dropped out of school. UNICEF says about 40% of students from grades 1 to 9 across the nation no longer attend formal classes. UNICEF spokeswoman Marixie Mercado says about half of those children are now refugees in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Turkey. In the northern city of Aleppo, for example, only 6% of children of school age are in classrooms. But the school year there and in other locations began as planned on September 15th. Talk of a military strike by the United States had caused uncertainty about starting classes. But schools opened after a strike appeared less likely. Still, many children who once walked to school are now taken there by their parents, and other families have simply left the country. Lebanon now is trying to help about 550,000 school-age Syrian refugee children. UNICEF says the Lebanese public education system can take care of 300,000 Lebanese children. UNICEF is establishing schools for refugee children in buses. In Jordan, UNICEF says about 2/3 of 150,000 Syrian school-age children are not in school. In Iraq, UNICEF says 9 out of 10 Syrian refugee children are out of school. Inside Syria, Ms. Mercado says the educational system has been torn apart. Both UNICEF and the Syrian government say about 3,000 schools have been damaged or destroyed. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Should girls go to school only with other girls? Is it better for boys to attend all boys schools? Educators at a school for girls in Washington, D.C. believe children do better in classes of the same sex. But other experts say there is no real evidence to support that idea. They believe there are other, more important things that make a school effective. Excel Academy is the first all-girls school in Washington, D.C. that is independently operated and supported by taxpayers. It opened its doors in 2008. One of its students is 10-year-old Anaira Clavijo. Anaira attended kindergarten in a classroom with boys. She has now been at Excel for the last 5 years. Anaira says boys have different interests than girls. She praises her school, saying the staff makes her feel like the smartest person in the world. The Excel Academy provides free education to children from families without much money. It serves more than 600 girls from preschool through grade 5. 3 meals are served each day. Kay Savage established the school and is its leader. She says that when boys and girls are taught together, the teachers teach for the boys. She says boys are a little louder and much more active than the girls. She says she believes that makes girls second-class citizens in their schools. Elaine Weiss is an education expert at the Economic Policy Institute. She believes other considerations besides same-sex classes have a bigger effect on success in school. She says everything that happens in children's early development is important. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. American librarians have announced their choices for Best Children's Books of 2014. One honored book is the story of a squirrel and an imaginative girl. Another is about trains. Deborah Taylor is a librarian at the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore, Maryland. She has served on several award committees. She says the committees look for good writing and good storytelling. The American Library Association's John Newbery Medal honors the writing of a book. Its Randolph Caldecott Medal honors the illustration or pictures of a book. This year, the Newbery Medal went to Flora and Ulysses, The Illuminated Adventures by Kate DiCamillo. It was her second work to win a Newbery. Flora and Ulysses is a humorous story about a squirrel and a girl who live in a world both real and unreal. The Caldecott Medal was awarded to Locomotive, a book by Brian Floca. It has been praised for its technical understanding and explanations of how things happen on a moving train. Librarians also give out other awards to books for children and young adults. For example, the Coretta Scott King Award goes to African American writers and illustrators for books about African American culture. This year's award went to Rita Williams Garcia for her book P.S. B11. The Robert F. Seibert Medal is for informational books. Parrots Over Puerto Rico by Susan Roth and Cindy Trumbore won the 2014 medal. Their book tells about how scientists and activists saved the local birds. Librarian Deborah Taylor says the book shows Puerto Rico as it is not often seen. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Pakistani officials plan to name a school and a sports center for a student who stopped a suicide bomber. 15-year-old Aitazaz Hassan saved hundreds of other students at his high school earlier this year. The school is in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Police said Aitazaz Hassan saw the bomber moving toward the building's entrance. The attacker looked suspicious to Aitazaz, who tried to stop him. That is when the bomb exploded. The attacker was killed, and Aitazaz died later in a hospital. The student's older brother noted that Aitazaz often said he would fight if he came face to face with a suicide bomber. Provincial Governor Shauqatullah Khan visited the home of the boy. He announced an award for the family of about $47,000. Governor Khan told VOA that the sacrifice of children like Aitazaz Hassan is a cause for national pride and a great honor for his village. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif declared earlier that the student should be honored with Pakistan's highest award for bravery. Reports say the honor is expected to be presented to the boy's family on March 23rd. Pakistani education activist Malala Yousafzai expressed deep regret about the death of Aitazaz Hassan. She spoke from Britain. She lives there now after surviving a Taliban attack. She said she was pleased to belong to a country where brave people like Aitazaz Hassan are born. Malala has gained worldwide praise for her opposition to militants and her support for the rights of women. Her book, I Am Malala, is an international bestseller. But heads of private schools in Pakistan have banned it. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Experts estimate that half of the 6,000 languages spoken on our planet will have disappeared by the end of the century. In West Africa, academics are trying to protect the language and rich cultural heritage of Togo. At the University of Lomé, Professor Nbuike Adovi Goiakwe studies video of Gen cultural rituals. The professor is a cultural heritage specialist. He himself is a Gen, one of many ethnic groups in Togo. He has made films of Gen cultural customs with financial assistance from the United States. He says the Gen have an important place in Togo's history and culture. Gen rituals show how its people see their world, the interaction between the living and the dead, the seen and the unseen. The Gen believe in many different voodoo gods. But today, Professor Goiakwe says fewer and fewer Gen children go through voodoo initiation ceremonies. He says that increasingly the new generation does not recognize the importance of these cultural traditions. He says formal education and the spread of Christianity have reduced their influence. Many young people think traditional practices are uncivilized. And while the Gen language is widely spoken in Lome, the professor says it is not taught in schools. Gen is one of about 39 languages spoken in Togo. Anahit Menashan is a language specialist with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. She says a language needs people who speak it as their first language. She says a language needs people who can speak it as their second language. If there are not, she says, a language is extinct. She says languages can die as a result of increasing globalization. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Community colleges in the United States have a lot to offer. Educators say these two-year colleges may be a good choice for international students who have finished secondary school and want to study in the U.S. Today we tell about a program for such students. It is called the Community College Initiative Program. It is designed for students from areas underserved in education and skills training. It lasts one school year. Since 2007, about 2,100 students from 20 nations have taken part in the program. The Bureau of Educational Affairs of the State Department provides for their needs. 3 consortia, or organizations, of community colleges work with the Bureau of Educational Affairs to administer the program. Schools across the United States take part. Cider Rahman is project director of the Community College Consortium, led by Northern Virginia Community College. He says many students in poor rural areas do not have an equal chance to succeed. At the start of their stay in America, students deepen their knowledge of English and learn about their school's surroundings. They can choose from among several fields of study, such as information technology, business administration, and agriculture. Other areas open to them include media and journalism and engineering. Students attend classes and study at participating community colleges. They can also join in internship programs with businesses or nonprofit organizations. You can get more details of the Community College Initiative Program from the Public Affairs section of the U.S. Embassy in your country. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Growing up can be hard in poor neighborhoods where crime is common. That is the situation Marco Antonio Aguilar faced when he started at Garfield High School in Los Angeles, California. The boy hated school. He says he had the wrong friends, often missed classes, and even got into fights. The school suspended him, barring him from attending classes. He almost was sent to a school for problem students. But Marco Antonio changed his behavior. He says a talk with his mother helped him change. And he praises his teachers for the help they provided. But now, students at Garfield High no longer receive suspensions. The punishment itself has been suspended. Jose Huerta, the Garfield High principal, took the action when he first arrived at Garfield more than 4 years ago. Back then, more than half the students were leaving school without finishing their studies. At the same time, Garfield was suspending nearly 700 students yearly. But Mr. Huerta had other ideas about how to deal with young people who misbehave. He said most of the suspensions were for behavior known as willful defiance. He said that could include something as minor as chewing gum in class. Under Mr. Huerta's leadership, students involved in willful defiance first talk to a teacher. Then a parent may get involved. Finally, group support can be provided. Today, Garfield graduates 85% of its students. And last year, the Los Angeles Unified School District changed its punishment policy. The whole district banned suspension to punish students for willful defiance. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. The reported rape of a 6-year-old student at a well-known school in Jakarta has received widespread media attention in Indonesia. The costly Jakarta International School, or JSI, serves many children of diplomats and wealthy foreign families. Indonesian police have arrested several suspects in connection with the incident reported in early April. Similar reports of sexual abuse at the school have followed. This week, another kindergarten student also said he was abused at the school. The Education Ministry ordered the kindergarten closed. The ministry said the school had been operating without permission. Tim Carr heads the Jakarta International School. He described the recent incident at the school as an unimaginable tragedy. He said the school is taking all measures to prevent another. Years ago, American investigators named a former JSI teacher as one of the worst child sex offenders ever identified. American William James Vahey worked at the school from 1992 until 2002. He killed himself last month after U.S. federal investigators seized some of his computer records. The evidence included 90 photographs of boys Vahey reportedly abused. The number of reported rapes is increasing in Indonesia, but the reports do not get a lot of public attention. Last year, the Indonesian Child Protection Commission declared child rape a national emergency. But it said it does not have dependable numbers on rape. A large part of Indonesian society considers it offensive to talk about sexual abuse. Victims are often afraid to report such crimes. They fear it will dishonor their families. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Many people believe that teaching music to children makes them smarter and better able to learn new things. But the organizers of a new study say there is no scientific evidence that early musical training affects the intelligence of young people. An estimated 80% of American adults think music classes improve a child's ability to learn and do well in school. Researchers at Harvard University, however, have found that there is one thing musical training does not do. They say it does not make children more intelligent. Samuel Mayer is a graduate student in Harvard's School of Education. He says it is a mistake to think that learning to play a musical instrument improves a child's intellectual development. He says the proof comes from studies that measured the mental ability of two groups of 4-year-olds and their parents. One group attended music class. The other went to a visual arts class. He says tests failed to provide evidence that those in music classes were any smarter. Samuel Mayer says only one study of many has seemed to show a small percentage increase in IQ, intelligence scores, among students. But he says musical training can be important for cultural reasons. In his words, we teach music because music is important for us. He notes that the works of writer William Shakespeare are not taught so that children will do better in physics. He says Shakespeare is taught because it is important. He does not think music needs to be any different than that. A report on the effects of music training in children was published in the journal PLOS ONE. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.